What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Wildcat Dash here on Dash Sports TV. A bit of a little different setting tonight as we are normally doing our shows on Fridays, but here nonetheless. My name is Jacob Mennuti. I'm joined once again, as always, with my co-host Ryan Wall. And as the title of our show says, it is game week. It's game week. I'm so excited. How are you feeling today, Ryan?
I'm very excited. I can't believe we're only 2 days away. Like when we started the show, we never even thought that we would have football this season. It's just crazy to think about.
It honestly is crazy how like fast time flies. But nonetheless, we will get into it. We'll start with our first topic of the day. Head coach Kevin Sumlin released his depth chart a few days ago, leading up to Saturday's matchup against Utah. And while there were some not so surprising things about the depth chart, like Grant Gunnell and Gary Brightwell being named the obvious starters, of course, there were certainly a few interesting things to come out of this week's depth chart. So, I mean, what stood out to you, Ryan, in the depth chart released a couple days ago? Were there some interesting things that you noticed on the depth chart?
The first thing I noticed was the running backs. Nathan Tilford was listed as the third running back, which was just surprising. I mean, we've heard Grant Gunnell talk in the past weeks how well Michael Wiley's been playing and encouraging him, but it's just crazy because like Nathan Tilford has a lot of potential, and it's just he might not get the time here in Arizona.
Yeah, it was interesting because I think this running back core was so good, and it kind of took a hit in the last couple of weeks with Bam Smith opting out and now Frank Brown being injured for the foreseeable future. I think he was out for a couple of weeks, I think they said. But the depth chart certainly thinned out for Nathan Tilford to get an opportunity. But I think what Arizona wants to do is incorporate that second running back as kind of a third down back and someone that they can throw to and use in the passing game. And that's exactly what Michael Wiley is. But I definitely agree. I think Nathan Tilford really showed a lot last year, enough so that I think he'll get carries. I think you want to look at that running back depth chart and you're like, oh, wow, Nathan Tilford's third. Like, there's no way he's going to get a lot of touches. I think it's a little bit different in this scenario. I think, he'll get touches. I think this running back core will get rotated through. And Jalen John, I think, was listed as the fourth guy there. I think he might see a couple carries as well. So I definitely think Arizona's going to rotate through those running backs. But I think the biggest thing that jumped out to me was kind of how that safety position group and kind of how the pecking order kind of laid itself out. I mean, first of all, to see Reddy Short listed as the starter was super interesting to me because, I mean, this is his fourth year with the team, and he's a redshirt junior, and in his first 3 seasons, he didn't play at all. Like, he literally did not play. Like, he had 0 career snaps in college. Like, he has yet to take a snap as an Arizona Wildcat, like just as a college football player. Like, we haven't seen him at all on special teams either. Like, usually, a guy isn't necessarily a starter. He's third or fourth in the depth chart, but, he's an athletic defensive back. So you figure you can throw him in at special teams. But we didn't really see him do that either. So, like, this dude has just been completely hiding behind the scenes on this team. And honestly, I don't know. I think that it's easy for us to kind of be super worried about a guy who hasn't taken a whole lot of snaps and hasn't taken a single college snap in his career on defense. But honestly, I think that the fact that he was listed as a starter makes me super optimistic about him, because that means that and Paul Rhodes think that he's better than the majority of the safeties on the team, right? Like media access, has been super limited this offseason. So, we haven't really been able to watch this team before in the season like we normally do. So we kind of have to take these depth charts as a way of the team saying that, these are the guys that we want in camp. These are our best guys. And I don't know. So to see him as the number one guy, it makes me really optimistic. And this isn't really a situation where it's like, he's starting because he's the only option there. Like, he beat out Christian Young for that starting spot. Christian Young's listed as a backup. He started last year for Arizona. So to see Reddy Short and not only him, but Jackson Turner as well beat out Christian Young for that starting spot, it makes me really optimistic about them. And I don't think I'd be too worried just because they haven't seen time. I don't think Paul Rhodes would just throw a dude out there just for the sake of throwing him out there and getting playing time. I trust their process, and I think it was a cool decision to see both Jackson Turner listed as the starters.
Yeah, another thing that stood out to me was a position group we've been talking a lot about this offseason, and it's been the linebackers. and they're listed as they're going to start four linebackers, and that was a little surprising. I mean, all the guys listed, I see bright things in their future. I like all the guys, but they're just young players. Besides Anthony Pandy and Jalen Harris.
Yeah, that linebacker core is really interesting to me as well. It was like, definitely the most interesting thing was that there were four linebackers listed as starters. So, which probably means that Arizona is going to stick with its 3-4 scheme, which I don't really know how I feel about. I mean, I think right now with everyone healthy, I think a 3-4 scheme is probably the best option, especially since Arizona doesn't have a lot of edge rushers on the defensive line. Like, I think like if they were to run a 4-3, I don't think it would really work out well because everybody on the defensive line is just these big freaking dudes. Like I can't really see any of them playing edge rusher in a 4-3 scheme. So maybe a 3-4 is the move right now, but it definitely concerns me that if one of them gets hurt, we're going to be in a lot of trouble because I think half of the backups for the linebacker position are walk-ons. So like I don't know how I really feel about having a walk-on as our second string linebacker, but I don't know. Maybe there's a diamond in the rough at that, walk-on spot. Like I said, we have had little media access this season, so who knows? We haven't really got to see the walk-ons play a whole bunch. So maybe the coaching staff is a little more optimistic about that than we are. But yeah, I think if one of those four linebackers get hurt, I think we're going to be in a lot of trouble. I would expect some sort of a scheme change or something like that.
Yeah, and as you just talked about, injuries can change everything. And I think if a few of those guys that we just named get hurt, that they might need to switch up the scheme because, as we know, there's just not a lot of talent there. And another player that stood out to me that where he was listed was somebody that the coaches have raved about this season is Regan Terry. He was listed as the third nose tackle on the defense, and I was just surprised about that. Because I mean, how much playing time is he going to get? I mean, I know Roy Lopez is there, and he's a talented veteran player, but I wish Terry was farther up there.
Oh yeah, we've talked about Regan Terry a bunch of times. We love him. He's just a monster. But like I think in this situation, like the D line is just so like that's such a good position group. Like I think like it's probably the best defensive like position group on Arizona's team in terms of depth and like just overall talent. So I mean, I don't think Regan Terry needs to play that much because I think there's so many other options. But yeah, I mean, if you were to run a 4-3 scheme, he's the perfect like left end or right end, because that's what he played in high school, and he was a really good edge rusher, and now he's freaking huge. So like, we could like if an injury were to happen and we're gonna need to shuffle up this defensive scheme, I think a 4-3 could be an option. And I hate to do it, but maybe move Jalen Harris back down to the end position and have Regan Terry on the other side. But I don't know. I like to have Jalen Harris as an outside linebacker. That was just what he was best at in his freshman season. But injuries are gonna screw everybody over, so you got to make changes everywhere. But yeah, I would like to see Regan Terry a little bit higher on the depth chart, but I just don't think Arizona needs him to play a whole bunch just because there's so many other guys that are not only, bigger than him, but more experienced as well, like big 300-pound dudes that are just have been here longer than he has. So I don't know. Yeah, I would like to see him play more, but I'm not quite sure Arizona needs him to play that much this season.
Yeah, and on this defense, they lack experience. So I do think that they're going to capitalize on the little bit of experience that they have with those players. I mean, you're right. They're not going to just throw out freshmen when they don't need to. I mean, if they got the transfers with Roy Lopez, and they need to use those older guys.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a method to Paul Rhodes' madness. Like, right, like we were looking at the safety groups, and it was like, why the heck is Jackson Turner starting? Like, I thought Christian Young and Reddy Short were the two guys because in Christian Young's media availability, he was talking about, yeah, I'm playing with the starters. I'm playing as the one, and Reddy Short's right next to me. So, we've been playing a lot together as the starters. So I guess in a sense we're not supposed to be so surprised to see Reddy Short there, but to see Jackson Turner there so late, because I think something happened late where they just thought Jackson Turner was the better option over Christian Young. But I like Jackson Turner. He was a 4-star prospect coming out of high school. I think he was initially a corner, but I think because of his size or speed or whatever, they moved him to safety. But I'm interested to see on how they use him. I think there were 3 starters listed at the safety position. So maybe one of them is going to be playing spur. I don't really know, but I definitely think there's a method to the madness, and I kind of like that it wasn't exactly what we expected, because that means we're in for to be watching something fun, right? Like I totally expected to see Christian Young the starter, and now that he's the backup and Jackson Turner is there, I think it's a little more interesting. And it's like, oh, maybe the coaching staff thinks more highly of Jackson Turner. Maybe this is a pretty legit dude that we can have in our secondary.
Yeah, well, but I also think that we don't know their reasoning yet. Like Christian Young still could be interchangeable in that group, and they could just be interchanging with all those guys and getting them all a lot of playing time. So we just don't know yet. I think over the next about 3 games in, halfway through the season, we'll see where the group stands.
Sure, yeah. I mean, we're talking about the depth chart, but why don't we get into previewing Saturday's game, because that's why we're all here, right? The Arizona Wildcats are kicking off its 2020 season against the Utah Utes in Salt Lake City on Saturday at 1:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We are in a time zone difference now, so it's 1:30 p.m. here in Tucson, 12:30 on the West Coast. But nonetheless, it'll be on ESPN2. So what do you think about this game, Ryan? I mean, we'll get into our final predictions later on in the show, but tell me, what are you looking for on Sunday? Are there any players or position matchups that you're excited to watch?
Not particularly, but the game, I think there's a certain game plan that they need to follow. As we know, Utah has a great defensive front, so I think that I think Kevin Sumlin needs to establish the run early, as we've said, and just keep the pace of the game. And keep looking at the clock and not just throwing it a ton right away. And I also want to see Grant Gunnell take control of this offense and really show and establish that he's the leader of this team.
I agree. I think if there's any way that Arizona wins this game, it's going to be because they just dominate time of possession, right? Like if Arizona's defense is on the field more than it should be, they're going to lose 100%. Like this defense is just not good enough to be on the field as much as it needs to be. Like the offense needs to carry the workload of the time of possession and just basically control the game, instead of, bombing it on 2nd and 8, why not just run the ball? And now you set up 3rd and short. Maybe you can throw something to Bryce Wilmer or something. So, slowly move chains and not so much just all or nothing plays. And, I really want to see Arizona take control of this game, but I'm also looking at a couple other things. I mean, the matchups in particular, I want to, I'm going to be really excited to see Arizona's defensive line going up against Utah's offensive line. Like, I'm not too familiar with, Utah's offensive line this year, but I feel like they always have a pretty solid, pretty good offensive line, right? Like, they're never bad, I think. So I think this is a really good test for Arizona and its defensive line. I mean, we've talked about it before, but Arizona's line could be pretty good this year. Like, a lot of big 300-pound dudes on that line, and not only that, but their experience as well. Like we already talked about, Aaron Blackwell and Roy Lopez are both graduate transfers. They're going to be starting on that line. Trayvon Mason and Jalen Cochran, they're both seniors. They're going to be the backups, so they're going to be rotating through as well. So just more experienced players being thrown into the mix at that D-line. Keon Bars, Nahi Salunga, Mikey Irving, they've all been here before. None of those guys are freshmen, so they're all in their 2nd or 3rd season with the team. So I think the trenches will certainly be something that I will be watching on Saturday. And I look forward to watching that matchup. I think Arizona's D-line is pretty good. We should see some good things coming out of them.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an area they can capitalize, because if Utah does start throwing the ball, I think they're going to gash Arizona's defense up and down the field, and it could be ugly. But I also want to look at Arizona's receiving core. They have a bunch of big receivers, a bunch of guys over 6 feet too, and they just need to establish that. I think they need to get Booby Curry heavily involved, and especially when they get in the red zone, I want to see some jump balls for them in the corner. And yeah, I think that's where they could capitalize.
Yeah, I think Arizona has a really good opportunity to jump on this secondary, because they're losing 3 starters from last year. Utah is. So, now you've got your returning wide receivers coming in, going up against a new group of cornerbacks. That could be a potential matchup that you can exploit early, right? Take a lot of shots down the field early, just kind of, spook them a little bit and just kind of see, oh shoot, they're throwing to us. Like, they're not messing around. So I don't know, maybe you can take a couple shots early. I know we want to establish the run game, so I don't know what kind of scheme they'll be running right out of the gate, but that'll definitely be something to watch for. Also want to kind of watch the tight ends a lot and see what that situation is like this week. I mean, obviously that was the talk of the offseason, right? Like as it is every year, but I feel like this year in particular is a little more hope than normal seasons that maybe we actually will see the tight ends involved. Bryce Wilma and Grant Gunnell have joked with each other about, getting Wilma more involved with the offense and taking the checkdowns and throwing it to Wilma in the flats. And that's not really something that Arizona and Khalil Tate did a whole lot together last year. It was a lot of all or nothing plays, and the Wildcats offense was just so weird last year. And I really hope to see a little bit of a difference in that. So I'm kind of hoping that this offensive scheme can kind of shift a little bit away from the all or nothing plays and utilizing the flats and taking the yards that are given to them. And I also want to see how Stacey Marshall is used as well. Specifically in the passing game. I really hope that Noel Mazzoni draws up some passing plays for him and really takes advantage of that physical mismatch. Like, I mean, the dude is 6'5", 238 pounds. Like, it would be criminal to not use him as, a passer and just use him as an extra blocker. Like run some plays in the end zone for him. Like, throw him out there all by himself and out wide and let him go to work on a smaller corner or a safety or whoever they decide to put on him in a red zone situation. Like, I don't know. I think we'll have I hope to see a whole lot of Stacey Marshall. I don't know if we'll really see him a lot in week one. He'll probably be worked into the offense, a little more slowly than that. But we should see a lot of Bryce Wilma on the field. And, hopefully they'll be running some routes and, not just lining up right next to Peyton Fears at the right tackle position. And hopefully they'll use more than just an extra blocker in this offense,
Yeah. I think early on in that game on Saturday, they need to establish that's a big part of how I think this offense can grow. And a lot of great offense is the quarterback's best friend is the tight end. We've seen all across pro football, college football, the tight ends are heavily involved. And as we saw, like I was watching the Penn State game like a few weeks ago, and like their tight end, he's a top tight end in the country, and he had like 8 receptions. Like that's how maybe that's a little too much for us, but you need to use them a lot because they do have some good talent there.
Yeah, I mean, look what Florida does with Kyle Pitts. Like, he's like probably their best receiver, and he's their tight end. Like, George Kittle with the Niners, Mark Andrews with the Ravens, Travis Kelce with the Chiefs. When Gronk was there at the Patriots, like, it is such a useful piece of an offense, and it really just opens up everything because you got all your corners lined up on your wide receivers, and the linebackers are basically just sitting in the middle of the field, either just lurking the pass over the middle, or they're watching the running back. They're not worried about the tight end at all. If you throw the tight end there as like a potential passing option, now you got to put a guy on the tight end. And we've talked about Stacey Marshall being 6'5". That's a mismatch. Their linebackers are going to be 6'2", around there, and nobody's going to be that big as Stacey Marshall. So if they lined up in man coverage and they go one-on-one with Bryce Wilma or Stacey Marshall, like they can just catch the ball over him. Like I don't know. I think that the tight end has so much potential in an offense, and I hope that this season is the season where we actually really do see him, and that'll definitely be something I'll be watching this week as well.
Yeah, I think they have a good shot this weekend. I really do.
Yeah, well, why don't we get into some final score predictions for Saturday's game against Utah? The Wildcats don't have a very good track record against Utah in most recent years. They lost 35-7 last year. They got drummed the year before with that score being 42-7. Like they haven't beaten the Utes since 2015. Like the Las Vegas bettors don't expect this to be a close game either, with the line being set at 14 points. So, I mean, what do you think, Ryan? Is there any possible way that Arizona walks away 1-0 after this game?
Yeah, I really do. And I've been going back and forth on this game for weeks. Like, I think to myself they could win, and then like it could go the other way. I think it's going to be a high scoring game. I think both teams are going to score 25, 27 plus, and it's just I don't know. I'm still it's hard. In our staff picks on the Daily Wildcat, I predicted us to lose by a touchdown, but I'm kind of overthinking it a little bit now.
Honestly, I've been waffling back and forth too because it feels like this is a game where it's easy to just say, oh yeah, Arizona's getting it smoked. But I don't know. I think this game will be close. Like, I actually think Arizona will cover the 14-point spread. I can't see them getting blown out, but I don't think Arizona will necessarily. I think they'll come up just short. But I can totally see this game being a shootout. Like, both teams are kind of in the same boat, where they're replacing a ton of starters on its defense, but has a good amount of returning talent side of the ball. So I totally wouldn't be surprised if this is a game where both defenses just struggle to get stops. Like on our staff picks over at the Wildcat, I had them losing 38-30. So I just see a lot of points being scored in this game. I don't see the defense really making a whole lot of stops when it matters most. And I don't know. I'm honestly a little optimistic about this matchup if Arizona ends up winning, just because like we just talked about with the wide receivers versus Utah's secondary. Like, Utah is replacing 3 of its cornerbacks, like Julian Blackmon, Jalen Johnson, and Terrell Burgess. Right, those are 3 top cornerbacks they're going to have to replace. So, like, if there's a position group that Arizona can exploit in this game, it's the secondary. Like, I would expect Arizona to take some deep shots early and just kind of get a feel for the corners. And I'm really confident in Arizona's wide receiver group. I think that there's a lot of returning talent there. They're pretty deep at that position. Like, guys like Stanley Berryhill and Trey Adams, who started last year, are now backups, and they're listed as the 4th or 5th wide receiver on the depth chart. So that means that the upcoming talent has outproduced them, and we could see a productive little wide receiver group with Boobie Curley and Brian Castile and Jamari Joyner. So I don't know. I'm confident in this wide receiver group, but of course, we all really expect like Arizona's defense to be shaky. So I expect a lot of points to be scored here, and I think Arizona's defense scares me a little bit because Utah's offense is not as bad as you would think that they're. They're pretty, like, they got a couple of weapons that make me a little bit nervous. Like, they got Brigham Covey and they've got Brant Keithy in particular. Like, I don't know, great. Like, Brigham Covey is legit, at least from what I've heard. He's a great player, but I think Brant Keithy scares me a little bit more, honestly, just because Arizona's linebackers are going to be lined up against him since he's the tight end. So I don't know. I mean, between Utah's run game and having to guard Brant Keithy, I think that the linebacking core is going to have their hands full. So I expect a whole lot of points being scored in this game. Like, I could easily see in this one being a shootout, but I think Arizona's going to fall a tad short. I think they'll cover the spread, but I don't know if they'll exactly win this game.
Yeah, I just have a very good feeling about this offense this weekend. Like, I think they're like, I don't see any way this offense doesn't score 30 points.
Yeah.
I just don't. I would be shocked if they don't. I would be shocked. I just love this offense so much. And I think their defense is going to prove that they're a little underrated. I think their linebackers are veterans, and I think they're good. And I think 100% I think they're going to cover the 14 easily. I think it's going to be 3 to 7 point game.
Yeah, I think this is interesting because I think Arizona's catching Utah at the right time, right? Like, I think that if this was, week 4 and, we're sitting here and we're looking at this game, like, no, I wouldn't peg that as a win, necessarily, just because, it's later in the season. So Utah has, more weeks to kind of get established. But in week 1, like, they're starting a whole new quarterback and a whole new running back, and they've got the whole new secondary that they got to work with. Like, Arizona could be catching this team at the right time and catching them while they're still trying to, get all their stuff together and make sure that they're ready for the season. Like, I don't know. Arizona's offense is sneaky good. Like, nobody, expects them to be very good, but Grant Gunnell is legit. Like, they've got good running backs. They've got wide receivers. Like, this team's going to score a lot of points, and they've got a good offensive line too. A lot of returners. That 5 is a really good starting offensive line. Like last year, part of the problem was that Grant Gunnell was just getting sacked like every 1.5 seconds as soon as it would drop back. But now that this offensive line is together for another year, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Arizona wins this game. But like, I don't know. I think the biggest difference maker for me is just the coaching. Like, if you look at these teams' personnel issues, they're exactly the same, right? Like, Utah's got a new quarterback. So does Arizona to an extent. Utah's got a new starting running back. So does Arizona. Utah's got a whole new defensive, secondary and starters to replace. So does Arizona. So, I mean, like, you really start to look around. You think, where's the difference maker going to be in this game? And I don't think it'll be on the field. I actually think it'll be on the sidelines. And if you want to compare coaching staffs, I mean, Utah clearly has the upper hand. Like Kyle Whittingham is like one of the best coaches in the conference, like hands down. Like he always makes that team competitive every single year, and with not even the top recruits either. Like you never really see Utah haul in these 5-star recruits. They're always bringing in these 3-star guys and maybe a couple 4-stars, and they compete for the Pac-12 championship every single year. So that really tells you what kind of coaching staff they have over at Utah. And I don't know, like I'm optimistic about Arizona's coaching staff, especially this year with all the new guys. I think that they hired some real coaches who can come in and make a difference. But which coach is going to make the better, make the best in-game adjustment at halftime? I have to think that Kyle Whittingham is going to outcoach Kevin Sumlin in this game. So I think that the personnel issues match up really interesting together, but I think that difference maker will be the coaching staff.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And also what we've been talking about for weeks now is that you never know what's going to happen. We don't know when certain teams started and stopped practicing, how much time they've been together. So I think there's going to be some upsets in the Pac-12 this week, and I think this could be one of them. I think this has a good shot of being one of the few upsets that I think could happen this weekend.
I mean, yeah, like we've seen crazier things happen in like the Pac-12. Like I remember a few years ago, Arizona, hosted, whatever ranked Oregon when they had Justin Herbert, and they blew the doors off of them. It was like 40-something to 7. Like Justin Herbert looked terrible. He couldn't figure out the zone. Like, I don't know, like we've seen crazier things happen in college football before, and we know how the Pac-12 is. Like the Pac-12 is infamous for just beating up on each other, and that's part of the reason why we never see a Pac-12 team in the college football playoffs, is because everyone's conference record sucks, because there's some random team that always beats the team that they're not supposed to beat. We saw it last year when an ASU went and beat Oregon and basically ruined their college football season hopes, or the college football playoffs hopes. So we've seen crazier things happen, and I think Arizona is catching this team at the right time. I don't know, 14 points is, I don't know, I wouldn't take that spread. I really wouldn't. As someone who he's watching Arizona a lot, and they may be a little bit biased, but optimistic about this team. I don't know. I wouldn't take that spread. I think this is going to be a pretty close game, and maybe they can pull off the upside. I think if you're looking at all of the Pac-12 games and you're seeing which games would be an upset, I don't really see Stanford upsetting Oregon, but I can easily see this game happening as well. But I don't know. Maybe we're a little bit biased. I think from what everybody else is saying, that this game shouldn't even be close. So I don't really know. I don't know. I think this game's going to be close, but who knows?
Yeah, I do think we're a little bit biased, just talking to the players and all. But yeah, I do. I think this has the best chance out of the better half of teams that Arizona's playing to be an upset. And yeah, I do think I think it's going to be a close one. But I think my final picks, I think I'm going to pick Arizona to win by a field goal, and I got Grant Gunnell throwing 3 touchdowns.
Ooh, I like that. I like the sound of that. I don't know if I'll still hold steady at my pick that Utah will win this game, just because I think that they'll be a halftime adjustment where Kyle Whittingham just like motivates the team, and they turn things around in the second half. But I'll hold steady at my pick, saying that Utah will win this game. But obviously I'll be rooting for Arizona this weekend. Hopefully we can see a win. But that's where we're gonna end things today. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and watching. Reminder that we actually have a new show schedule. We are here live here every Thursday now at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time for you Arizona folks, as we are in the daylight savings mode, the weird, awkward daylight savings mode. So tune in every single week for that. I will also be on Ute Dash tomorrow at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, where we will preview Saturday's game with Sammy Mora over at Ute Dash. So tune in tomorrow for that as well on Ute Dash. We also write columns now as part of our collaboration with Sports Pac-12. You can check that out over at sportspac12.com, where our man Ryan Wall writes columns. He just released another one today. So you can go ahead and check that out over on their website, and check out our website as well, where we post all of our clips and full highlights. And you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We're also posting our shows on Spotify and our streaming services as well. So you can go ahead and check those out as well. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow on Ute Dash. But if not, we will see you next week. Bye, guys.